$67,433,000. We take that times your rate per thousand, and that's the combined rate of the city, the county, the school, minus the debt service levies for all of those people. You can't take away anybody's debt service levy. You can also not, as of now, July 1st, you cannot take away the school instructional levy. For the City of Independence, it is just over $1 something. If you happen to live outside of the city of Des Moines, the highest that we've seen is the city of Waukee. It's $4 per thousand there, their school instructional. So that does cut into the amount that they can technically grab from TIF by quite a substantial amount. Again, in the city of Independence, it's just over $1, and that really seems to be common right in this area, Blackhawk, Buchanan, Delaware County. That's kind of the trend we're seeing with all the school instructional levies. This gives you total TIF revenue of about $2.3 million. Again, you'll remember that from your yellow section, you need $111,000 in general obligation bond debt payments for fiscal year 13 and $44,000 for rebates. So you unclaimed TIF dollars of about $2.1 million. So what this means is that you turn those dollars back over into value, and that value gets divided amongst the city, the county, and the school district in their proportionate shares. That's a very healthy amount to be giving back over. You do realize this as your budget. If you were to ask for more dollars, that wouldn't have a negative effect on your actual budget that you put together. It would have a negative effect on your general fund. So the key to TIF is to remember that as you ask for more dollars, you should be basing it on if there's increment growing in that TIF, if there's being incremental value and new value being added, because that offsets those additional dollars and shouldn't have a negative effect then on your general fund budgeting. So again, your growth factor for the last year in the TIF district was 4.17%. We're going to put that back to a 2%, which is a common growth rate in the TIF district. And this does go on for 2 pages, again, just adding that 2% growth rate each and every year. So again, you are turning back a very healthy amount. We want you to use TIF as a tool. It should be used, again, for debt, for improvements to a TIF area, for rebate agreements if you're trying to get a developer to come in there and do a project in your TIF district. That's exactly how TIF should be used, but from your report, you're using it the way that it should be used. So, are there any questions? We did bring out code sections 15A, 403, and 404 from the Iowa Code. Those are the code sections that deal with TIF and urban renewal. I can tell you the code sections are not updated only but 1 year after any legislative changes. So I alluded earlier that there were some TIF legislative changes this year. They are not reflected in those code sections because those code sections will not be updated until after we get into January, probably even March and April. What I can tell you is a couple of the changes that you must be aware of is when you're utilizing TIF, again, you can't take away the school instructional levy. That was one of the changes. There's this new urban renewal report that your city has to do, which is a nasty report that the state of Iowa is requiring be done. And really the reason I feel, and in conversations with bond counsel, the reason for that is they want to know what everybody in the state is using their TIF dollars for. The state has never had a handle on that in the past, and I think they're getting enough pressure that they now want to know what everybody is using your TIF dollars on. It is a report that's starting this year as a baseline for fiscal year 12, and the city will be required to, city staff will be required to put that together, and the council will be required to pass that every year prior to December 1st. Now, if it's not submitted by December 1st this year, there is no penalty other than your name goes on a naughty list. Next year, if you do not file that report by December 1st, they can withhold tax dollars from you until that report is filed and they've approved that report. So it's just something to be aware of. The city was not given a lot of time this year. They gave us the learning on October 9th and the report was due this year on December 1st. So not a lot of time there. A couple of other points with TIF. Before you issue any new general obligation debt, not having to do with refundings. Refundings are exempt, but any new general obligation debt, if it is in your TIF district, you must update your urban renewal plan. That's something you've probably only done once in the past, maybe to add land to your urban renewal plan. This is a new requirement by state law that you must update that urban renewal plan. Bond Council has done a streamlined process of this, and it should not take you but 1 or 2 meetings, but it does slow up the bonding process by probably 1 or 2 meetings as well, just because you have to abide by this new rule. Your planning and zoning, unless you're adding land, does not have to review the plan. It's something that you can handle as a council without P&Z getting involved unless you're actually adding land. And the other one is if you are going to use TIF financing for public building improvements, city offices, public fire station, police station, etc. There now has to be a feasibility study done as to why you would use TIF dollars versus using other tax
Can
dollars.
we do that ourselves?
You can ask about that. But that is one of the things where they will ask you to submit some sort of feasibility study as telling you why it's not logical to use local option sales tax, and maybe it's because it's not in your ballot and you've just voted on a ballot. Why it's not feasible to use property tax dollars, or why it is feasible that you should be using maybe a combination of. We do use the city of Hiawatha as a good example of this. If you've driven in the city of Hiawatha, they do have a brand new city hall. They voted it in, and they told the people up front they were going to pay for part of it with TIF. Now, this was before this law came on the books, but they did tell people up front they were going to use part of it for TIF, and their reasoning behind that was that they were implementing this TIF district, and it was going to blossom out from this. They were kind of calling that their city center. Their new city hall was going to be their city center, and they were planning on commercial development